All right, so we've gone over some, you guys hopefully did this in the lab I gave you. We went over some of the basic, transform properties that we can go over, position, rotation, and scale. Another one we can play around with is opacity, which is how opaque or see-through the character is. So here in exercise 4, I have this ghost, and I have this background, and what you could do is play around with opacity. So if you go under transform, you can see there's this opacity option that I can raise or lower from 0 to 100%. 100% would be fully opaque, 0 would be invisible, 50 would be semi-transparent. If you want to isolate that, you can use T for transparency, okay? So what I'm going to do is, much like the position, the rotation, or the scale, I'm going to animate this. So I'm going to set this, hit T for opacity, and I'm going to set this to 0 in the timeline here. And let's turn opacity from 100, or I'm going to keyframe it here. And then I'm going to go to here, and we're going to set this to 0. There's no way to do this with any of the features. You just have to go through the options here. And so what's going to happen is it's going to start at 100 and go to 0. Once again, this is all really just math based. So if you do out the math, if it's going down 100% in terms of, um, opacity over 2 seconds, then you divide that by 2 and it'd be 50 opacity units per second, essentially. And you get something like that. Okay. So we can play around with opacity. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is what's called an anchor point. Okay. So when you bring in when you have an image and you rotate as such, what usually happens is it will rotate around the center of the object. So in other words, if this was the planet and my finger is the point of rotation, it rotates from the center of the object. Okay. Sometimes, though, that's not really what you want it to do. So, for instance, if you know anything about how the solar system works, the Earth, or sorry, not the Earth, this isn't the Earth, but this planet would revolve not around itself, but actually around the sun being the center focal point. The way I kind of explain it is if I swing this mouse, this is the point of rotation as I bash myself in the head like a pair of nunchucks. But anyway, the point is the point of the rotation was not around this, but around this. Okay. So that's kind of what the anchor point is. So if you select something, you can go under the anchor point, and you can see this is the anchor point here, and I can actually change that value. So I actually placed it over here. So now when I rotate, you'll notice it rotates not around the center, but from around the edge. Okay. You could keyframe this if you want. Most of the time, people don't really do that. But if, let's say I want to reset this, you could do it through the numbers here. An easier way is to use what's called the pan behind button, which looks like this, and then select this, which is my point of rotation. This is now going to be my point of rotation. So now when I rotate, you can see that the planet is rotating around the sun. Okay. So I'm going to do that for each planet. Let's start with this planet. And I'm going to change the point of rotation by clicking on the center point there, the thing that kind of looks like a bullseye. And I'm going to do that here as well. Move that to there. So now all three have the same point of rotation, which is the sun. And I'm going to set a rotation to do maybe one full rotation. This should hopefully be review for you guys since we've done this before. All right. And yeah, there you go. That's a little too on the nose, so maybe I might stagger it a little bit so it kind of goes in order like that. I'll take these and move them over. All right. So see how we can change or play around with the rotation there by changing around the point in which it rotates. Its point of, and that is referred to as the anchor point. That's another aspect of the transform properties we can play around with. We'll do one more kind of example of this. This is maybe probably closer to maybe how you might really do this. So I have this raccoon, this character, and he has an arm and he has a tail. And I want to animate this character. So let's start with the arm. And I'm going to hit rotation. And if I try to rotate, you'll notice it doesn't really look very natural. What's happening here is imagine my arm is doing this. I'm not waving it from the center, which is where my elbow is. I'm actually waving it from my shoulder joint, right? And so that's kind of the problem. It's rotating from the center when it really should be rotating from the shoulder joint here. And so we can fix that by changing the anchor point or the point of rotation. So I'm going to take that and move it there. I can solo this like we learned about. And now when I rotate this, it should be more natural. Same thing with the tail. If I were to rotate the tail, it's kind of rotating not very naturally because the tail wouldn't rotate from the center of the tail. It would rotate where the tail connects with the torso, aka in the butt, basically. And so I need to move the point of rotation not here, but rather to there, where it would be matching up with the character. So I'm going to put that right there. Let's turn that off. And so now when I rotate this, looks a little bit more natural. So you can see how playing around with um, anchor points can change how, realistic our animation can look. All right, so I want you guys to try that out. That was what was that? That was 4, 5, and 6. Okay.